The base is dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It's time for the morning kickoff. We got a ton of things to get into today. Thank you, Kickoff Coffee, for sponsoring this opening segment. I'll let you know how you can support Kickoff Coffee, how you can support Soccer Down Here, and support youth development organizations that use soccer in just a bit. We've got U.S. men's national team conversation at 9:30 with Bart Keeler. We've got South American updates with our friend Tom Robinson of World Football Index and a million other outlets that Tom's involved in. Talk to him at 10. Lots of odds and ends news stuff. We'll get into some of it on Soccer Over There tonight at 7:05. We will have picks of the week tonight as well for you degenerates out there who are part of that. But I want to start with a situation that maybe is getting lost in the shuffle a little bit in this country. Canada did not play a friendly last night that they were supposed to due to essentially a boycott by their men's national team. We haven't seen anything like this in a long time. In the United States, there was a threat of a boycott. There's been multiple threats. The closest I think the U.S. men's national team ever got was ahead of the qualifiers for 2006, where they had to call in a group of players to train because they didn't think the full team was going to be part of it. Brought in a group of USL players at the time, and Clyde Sims from the Richmond Kickers ended up parlaying that into an MLS career and at least one cap, maybe a couple of caps with the U.S. men's national team. So one good thing that came out of it. This is a travesty just all the way around that it's gotten to this point. And the reason it's gotten to this point, I think more than anything, is on the Canadian Federation. I don't think all of the issues are on the Canadian Federation. Generally in these situations, it's a little bit of everybody. And also there are some other circumstances to it that you do have to keep in mind. Try to lay a couple of those out here as we're all trying to get caught up on this as well. This is really blown up in the last 24 hours or so. This friendly was originally supposed to be with Iran. That didn't go over so well. It was changed to Panama, who came to Canada for the friendly and then didn't get to play, which is really embarrassing. I don't think Panama will be answering Canada's calls anytime soon. So the statement came out Sunday afternoon. The game was Sunday night that they decided not to play the game because a new deal had been unnecessarily prolonged. It's time we take a stand for the future of soccer in Canada. Now, this is the first time Canada has qualified for the Men's World Cup since 1986. Very different world for Canadian soccer in 1986. And they've had a ton of debacles since. This generation is their golden generation. It's better than any generation of men's talent they've ever had. The women are in a great run of form right now as well. Now, they've had a much longer period, and you could even say maybe the group in 2012, 2011 through 2015, where I thought they had a very poor home World Cup on the women's side. Maybe that one's a little bit better, but this is a gold medal winning women's national team as they get ready for a World Cup next year that they have to qualify for later this year. So right now, and again, some of this stuff is trying to cut through the noise. The players want more transparency from the Canadian Soccer Federation. They want changes in the organization's leadership. That one might be a little trickier. They want World Cup compensation that includes 40% of the prize money and a, quote, comprehensive friends and family package, unquote, to the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. The last one, I would like some more details on that. The statement from the men's national team: we want to work together with our organization, but the relationship has been strained for years. And now Canada Soccer has disrespected our team and jeopardized our efforts to raise the standards and effectively advance the game in Canada. Now, the Canadian Soccer president, Nick Bontis, spoke to the media last night. He did not, I'm very clear in saying he spoke to the media. He did not take questions. It was not a press conference. It was not a back and forth. It was very odd. It was very poorly handled, even where you can look at some of the dispute and say, yeah, there's some things here that the players maybe need to be a little more realistic about, not the way that they've been treated. And the way this was handled, oof, very rough. Saying that they can't afford to give up 40% of the bonus money that comes in from the World Cup. And there is a conversation about equal pay as well. And I think the women's national team is demanding a similar structure that the United States has now with pooling the money. So it's not a percentage equal like everybody else in the world had done up to this point. It is taking all the money that both teams win, put it in a pool, and divide it up at the end of the Women's World Cup. He's saying that they can't afford to do that. Well, that's money that they wouldn't have had anyway. And I would assume, didn't count on because, again, this is the first time they've qualified since 1986. So if they were assuming they would qualify in 2022, man, that was pretty arrogant. Players want a review of the deal that Canada Soccer signed with Canadian Soccer Business, which is an entity that was formed in 2018-19. 10-year agreement. CSB, Canadian Soccer Business, represents both the men's and women's national teams in all sponsorship and broadcast deals. This is a deal that some are comparing to Soccer United Marketing, different situations in the way that they were created. There are some similarities, obviously, but the way they were created, Soccer United Marketing, for those who don't know, was created when the company that had the rights to market U.S. soccer, the United States Soccer Federation, basically was going belly up. And U.S. Soccer was in a tough spot. MLS stepped up and created Soccer United Marketing, which of course benefited MLS, and it benefited U.S. Soccer at a time where they weren't making any money. I can't imagine that Canadian soccer interests were making a lot of money on sponsorships as the Canadian Premier League was launching, which is one entity that really benefits from Canadian Soccer Business, the organization. There really wasn't a whole lot of money being made. Well, now that's changed, that the men have qualified, the women have won a gold medal, and things have progressed. But at that time, this was after the Women's World Cup in Canada, there weren't a lot of options on the table. So there's a lot going on here. And I would assume, as in most of these situations, probably both sides need to get over themselves a little bit. But Canada Soccer has to grow up. That's the number one element of this. And I will say Canada Soccer first as an overall community of soccer north of the border. There's a lot of growing up to do. This is a community that doesn't have a women's professional league. They have finally now created I don't know how successful the Canadian Premier League is, to be perfectly honest. They have had awful luck with the timing, with launching really during a pandemic, or before a pandemic. So that's affected them. There's no way around that. But prior to that, Canada hadn't had a true nationwide soccer league going back to the early 90s, the CSL. They've had teams that have played in U.S. leagues, and that's been going back to the old NASL, going back to 1967. You have 3 Division I teams there. You have the Canadian Premier League, which has grown. Now, obviously, having a Canadian president of CONCACAF has probably helped the Canadian Premier League grow a little bit, especially in terms of getting teams into the qualifying for CONCACAF Champions League. Maybe that individual, Victor Montagliani, has helped with the Canadian Premier League being a little more stable financially, and maybe taken a little bit away from Canada Soccer as an organization, and the CPL ending up getting it. Okay, these things happen. This was at a time, again, when you didn't really have much Canadian soccer business. So one thing that has come up about that aspect of it, and I'll get back to the growing up thing in just a second, the deal guaranteed Canada Soccer a baseline level of revenue of $3 million per year. This is the deal with CSB, Canadian Soccer Business. The vast majority of everything after that, and this is from the letter from the players, the men's national team to Canada Soccer, the vast majority of everything after the $3 million per year, chiefly sponsorship deals and broadcast revenues, goes to CSB. Deal was spearheaded by Montagliani, who's now the president of CONCACAF. It was designed to benefit the CPL. It's a 10-year deal. I don't know what Canadian soccer interests, what the Canadian Soccer Federation was actually making in terms of sponsorships, etc., prior to this deal. I vaguely remember when this was announced, and it's very vague. My guess is that $3 million is probably more than they were getting on average in the 10 years prior to this deal. because the men's national team hadn't qualified. They hadn't even been to the Hex. They weren't getting high-profile friendlies. They didn't have a lot of money. I would assume that this was seen as a good thing at that time. Well, now things have changed, and they absolutely have. And should everybody in good faith maybe come back to the table and, I don't know, not put off meetings because you're supposedly on vacation, stuff like that? That's been alleged of Canadian soccer leaders. Absolutely. Everybody needs to sit down and do it because it's an opportunity for everybody to make more money. And that's what these people are in the business of. The players want to make more money. Let's not get it twisted. They do. The federation wants to make more money. The people who want to sponsor want more eyeballs, all these different things. There's a lot to go on here. But the growing up thing, and this is what I want to finish with in the kickoff. This, as I've studied U.S. soccer and as I experienced some of the things with the U.S. Soccer Federation and just U.S. soccer as a whole, as a community, this reminds me a lot of the 90s with U.S. soccer, where you were going from being an old boys network to being a professional organization. And why was it an old boys network? Because there wasn't enough money or interest to get anybody else involved. And people also protected their spots. That happens too. And I'm sure that's the same in Canada. I don't know exactly there. But here it was, yeah, absolutely. Up until the U.S. was not even when they were first announced as the host of 1994. It was after FIFA essentially staged a coup d'etat on the United States Soccer Federation and got Alan Rothenberg in charge, because the organization had to grow up. It had to become a real big-time professional business because they had been awarded the World Cup and they were not in a position to host the World Cup when that change was made. I believe in 1990, end of 1990 or 1991. I think it was in process during the World Cup, or that was where 1990 World Cup, where the U.S. qualified for the first time in 40 years. But I think that was where it started to be obvious that the current leadership of the U.S. Soccer Federation were not going to be able to handle hosting a World Cup. So U.S. soccer had to grow up. Eventually it did. Now, it had growing pains, don't get me wrong. And obviously when FIFA stages essentially a coup d'etat and putting forth a candidate and telling people they should vote for it and like lobbying for that candidate to become president of U.S. soccer, that's not a good thing. It ultimately ended up being for the good of U.S. soccer. And of course, FIFA benefited too. They made a lot of money on that World Cup. Canada has to grow up and go from being a small-time federation to a federation that should be considered one of the powerhouses in CONCACAF. Now's the time. This just shines the light on all of that. There is better leadership out there to be had. There's now more money to deal with, and it would behoove everybody to sit down at the table and figure out how to divide that up and how to get more of it. Because these things are important when you're talking about, and the Canadian soccer president talked about having to fund a futsal team and a Paralympic team and all the youth teams and all these different aspects of it, which is absolutely true. There's a lot of things that a soccer federation funds that are not going to make money. Think of kind of like a college sports program. You have a couple things that are going to make you a good amount of money. And you have a lot of things that you're going to fund that you have to fund because it's the right thing to do. And they're programs that are needed because you are an entity that is trying to make money, but you are not a for-profit business. That can be a tough line to walk sometimes. Canada Soccer has to sit down and say, look, we're at a new dawn now. We're going to have World Cup games in our country in 2026. We have a league now that is, I hope, at least established to the point it's not going to go away anytime soon. You have a men's national team that is among the best in CONCACAF. You have a women's national team that is among the best in the world. Now is the time to sit down and come up with a strategic plan to figure all this out. It is not the time to miss games when you're getting ready for a World Cup, which is thoroughly embarrassing. There's so much for Canada to do. This has to be the wake-up call and not just linger around. However, with Canada soccer's history, this stuff has a tendency of lingering. They've got Nations League games coming up in CONCACAF very soon. You start missing that, then you've got some serious issues. We'll see. Keep an eye on this. This is a big story, and it reminds me of where U.S. soccer could have gone. Luckily, it didn't. I hope Canada doesn't go any further than this, because when you're calling countries in to play friendlies and you don't actually play them, because you can't manage the relationship with your men's national team, yeah, that's an embarrassment. We'll see if Canada can get over the embarrassment, but this is one of the worst embarrassments I've seen in quite a while in international soccer. And Canada should not be having this happen at this stage. They need better leadership. They need some leadership that's thinking bigger picture, and they all have to get down to the table and figure this out. We'll see what they do. Keep an eye on our friends north of the border going forward. Maybe we'll get a resolution this week. You're going to need to, because you got Nations League games coming up and they're going to have to show up. This is the Kickoff Coffee opening segment, opening kickoff. Make sure you go to kickoffcoffeeco.com. That's where you can get your kickoff coffee. And I know quite a few of you have gotten your kickoff coffee, which is awesome. You put in the code soccer down here 15, you get 15% off of your kickoff coffee. And know that 10% of the money that goes into kickoff coffee is then distributed to youth development organizations that use soccer to better the lives of kids. Great organization, great folks over at Kickoff Coffee. We're happy that they partnered with us, and we're happy to spread the word on coffee to you. Soccer Down Here 15. Use that code. Get signed up. Get your coffee. Drink your coffee when we have the opening kickoff segment. And sometimes I rant. Sometimes I just set the table. Today I ranted. John's waiting. Let's get John on. John, I was ranting about your Canadian friends. They've got to grow up. It's time. We'll see if they can. It's a pretty big embarrassment when you're having to cancel games a few hours before kickoff.
Yeah, and to your point, you were mentioning the
Oh, hold on 1 second. Just if you're wondering about the sound here, John is on Alabama audio today, so that's all I can say.
Yeah. You were mentioning the friends and family element of this, and in my following
the friends and family trip essentially to Qatar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, it is Canada Soccer's point of element. Their focus in this is right now. Canada Soccer says that we'll give you, meaning players, 2 tickets, and you got to pay your own way to Qatar. Canada
give them 2 tickets to what?
To the
game?
2 tickets to a game that Canada's
multiple
involved.
games. I mean, but do you know, or are you guessing? Because 2 tickets to. You said 2 tickets.
Yeah, 2 tickets to the games that Canada's playing in.
Okay, to all. Okay, got it. Thank you.
To all of those group stage matches.
Yeah.
But the family has to pay their own way.
Okay.
Canada's players are looking for as many as 8 tickets and for travel allowances to help families make their way to Qatar. So that's
I have no idea what the going rate is. I don't know if that is asking too much. It feels like 8 tickets is a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I have no idea about travel. If you're wanting 8 people per player and you want their travel paid for, that feels like a whole lot.
Yeah.
8 tickets, and if people can get there, they can get there. It's a different conversation. I don't know. I don't know what U.S. Soccer is doing in this regard, so I can't really compare it. I don't know what Mexico's doing in this regard. That would be the question for it.
And yesterday, when Canada Soccer's president Nick Bontis had you mentioned the press conference, or it was more like a one-sided press conference, or it was more like a
statement,
a talking to by Nick Bontis. He took no questions. Literally, it was 20 minutes, and the video is out there on non-Canadian broadcast partners where you can watch it. But he took no questions, and for recommended reading in all of this, one of the lead correspondents in this has been Rick Westhead at TSN, and he's been at the forefront of all of this. Westhead was there, and he wasn't allowed to ask any questions. No one was allowed to ask any questions. Bontis ranted, for lack of a better word, and then he stormed off. That doesn't work well in the public game and the PR game if you're trying to sit there and make a point about players' positions being untenable and what they want to have done financially. So Nick Bontis did himself no favors with his press talking to yesterday. With
my biggest issue with what Bontis said, and it goes back to one of the complaints the players have had. Look, I don't have all the dollars and cents in front of me. I don't know the figures. I don't know budgets. I can't I can't speak to that side of it. I do know that Canada Soccer was not exactly rolling in the money prior to that deal that they signed with Canadian Soccer Business.
Yeah.
It's the same situation as people saying that Soccer United Marketing did all these things from the very beginning, and they were trying to hurt U.S. Soccer and all this nonsense. They stepped in when U.S. Soccer was in a big problem. So let's stop with some of that nonsense. When people sense an opportunity and jump on it and grow something to another level, that's called good business. Let's stop that part of it. But what Bonta said that really upset me is he said that they were not going to be able to speak to the players last night because he had to talk to the media, because he had to talk to you folks or something like that. Buddy, first off, you weren't going to have a long conversation with the media anyway because you didn't take any questions. So you were going to issue a statement. You could have read your statement. You could have timed it. You could have known exactly how long it was going to take. Wasn't going to take all night. Took about 15, 20 minutes. Good for you. Your team invited another team to your country. Then they didn't play because you can't manage a relationship. It's not the time to say we don't have the time to meet. No, it's the time to stay up all night and hammer the stuff out. It's the time to get it done. That's what adults do. Now, I don't know if the players are 100% in the right here. I have a feeling that 8 tickets and wanting travel for the World Cup, if that's one of the major elements here, that doesn't feel like that should be a major element. I'm sorry. Love to have your family, be able to see you play in a World Cup. I get that. But to the point you're not going to play in a game, that's an issue. That's a big issue. I don't know if the players are 100% in the right. Generally, neither side is 100% in the right. But for Bontas to come out and say, no, I don't have time to talk to them tonight because I'm talking to you people.
Yeah.
No, that's childish. And that's somebody who probably doesn't need to be leading an organization in 2022 who I don't know has to deal with other human beings. Maybe he can be a bean counter somewhere and sit behind the scenes and not have to talk to people. But you better get somebody else in there who can actually, I don't know, develop relationships with people. Because you looked like a national, international embarrassment yesterday. You had a game scheduled. Your TV partners didn't have content. A team showed up. I hope you're paying their expenses.
Yeah.
Fans showed up. Fans earlier in the day didn't know if they should go to Vancouver for the game. All of these things happen, and you want to throw a snide remark?
Yeah.
No, you sit down, you issue your statement. If you don't want to take questions, whatever, that's your prerogative. You issue your statement, and at the end of it, you say, all right, I've got to go, people, because now I got to go sit down and talk to the team and figure this out so it doesn't ever happen again. You don't start popping off at the mouth like that. Thoroughly embarrassing and childish. And if that is a sign of how the conversations have gone, well, then I get it. But nobody's winning in this situation. The players aren't winning right now either. The players are not winning because they don't get any games. They've missed training sessions, and they missed a friendly. There's not a whole bunch of time for them before the World Cup. We've seen these things happen with pay disputes, usually around bonuses, with some of the African national teams. And it always takes a toll. Now, this time it's happening earlier. I remember the Ghanaian national team in 2014. You had issues, and you saw that team's performances go during the tournament because of it. We've seen it with Cameroon before, to the point that there's been talk about boycotting a World Cup game. Canada's got to get its act together. It's thoroughly embarrassing for them, for the federation, for everybody involved. It's sad to see where they could be taking the next step, and they are tripping and banging their head on the floor, falling face first. Maybe they'll get back on their feet this week. We'll find out. Let's talk a little bit about the U.S. men's national team. I saw it, Abby, in the comments. We have talked plenty about Mexico. I just because we don't always start every show when some idiots do something stupid doesn't mean we avoid it. I want to make that clear. We can't talk about every single thing in the same amount of time every single time. This one with Mexico, to me, is because their fans were angry because they were either getting outplayed or at least getting played straight up by Ecuador, and they're very angry about the situation with their team. I don't think it has anything to do with the actual issue with the word sadly anymore. I think it's being used as a prop now by fans who are angry. And that's worse. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's worse. It's bad. It's all bad. I don't know what the scale is. It's awful, whatever it is. But it's a friendly, and it is bad, and it's in the U.S. and Mexico needs to start getting more severely punished. And I don't know what that is, because it is a small number of morons who are doing this, and now they are doing it specifically to hurt the Mexican Federation. And that's a different conversation than what it was initially. It's a far more complicated one. Should the idiots win? Like, should they get the benefit of hurting the Federation because they're mad about results, or they want Tata Martino fired? I don't know how you handle that, to be perfectly honest. But the Federation and the players and the teams in the league and all that have worked very hard to eradicate it. It's not getting eradicated. Maybe better performances would eradicate it. That would be the issue that I think would change it. But sadly, those aren't coming either for Tata Martino and his team right now, as they have not scored in 2 games against South American competition. And they lost one, and they drew this one, and it's not looking good for Tata Martino in Mexico right now. The U.S. had a scoreless draw yesterday with South American competition. We're going to talk to Bart Keeler about that right now. Sorry, Bart. I wanted to throw that in about Mexico, because I honestly, I don't think it's even a giant talking point anymore, sadly. It is something that has to be dealt with, but I think the conversation's changed. I think yesterday it happened late in the game because their fans were angry because their team's not playing very well.
Yeah, I mean, I think both Canada and Mexico have an issue that they're not – that the issue is not the issue that's being presented. There's a lot of issues below it. I mean, U.S. soccer recently just went through this to a big degree with the U.S. women's national team, CBA, where, yes, a lot of the issue had to do with the actual CBA beforehand and the payments that were given to the women's national team. But really, a lot of the issue was just the inequality among men's and women's soccer, period. Now, obviously, U.S. soccer was able to find some kind of resolution, but it wasn't quick. It required a change in leadership before it was actually able to be met with. So,
and even then, it was tough.
I
think the biggest thing, Bart, that I keep trying to stress about this with what U.S. soccer did, because I was a little frustrated with some of the comments coming out after it from the women's side about how, this is just what it should be. Nobody in the world has done it this way. Right. No one. So, I mean, I understand the idea when we're talking about everything but the bonus structure. Everything up to the bonus, absolutely same amounts, right. Same per diems, same travel, all that the same. There shouldn't be a question where you have the conversation about providing extra benefits or providing salary versus a per game. That's a different issue. That's a more complicated one. But the bonus structure, the idea that this is just what it should be, nobody else had ever done it this way. So I really think Cindy Parlow-Cone and U.S. Soccer should get a ton of credit for leading the way, because that's not easy to pull off, because you're basically saying, hey, what you were getting before, you're not going to get all of that now because we're going to pool it here to the men. And right. It was agreed to. And it's full credit to the U.S. men's national team as well.
Well, and it did take some actual efforts from the men's and women's CBA group, their whoever their player representatives were. And I know the Mexican Federation, they've tried, I think, everything they can for the most part.
I really feel like
fix
they have
this issue.
Yeah.
Canada soccer, I mean, listen, it feels very. Jamaica recently dealt with a lot of stuff about this, where they were dealing with payer play.
Jamaica's got a new one.
Very different.
Have you heard the latest with Jamaica?
no, it's Monday. I haven't kept up with Jamaica's drama.
Well, I think they're stranded in Suriname right now, Bart, and their coach has resigned.
After the Nations League?
Yes.
The coach they just hired because they
Paul
hired
yes.
the one that they had because the only reason they kept him is because he was the only person who was willing to take the job. Yeah,
yes.
Great. Yeah, so at least Canada isn't quite there yet.
Paul Hall has resigned. Players have refused to move forward until the general secretary of the federation resigns. There's a WhatsApp that goes back and forth about it, but Jamaica played Suriname 1-1 in Nations League. After the match, the players came to the realization that they did not have a return flight to Jamaica for the return match on June 7th, tomorrow. Unconfirmed reports indicate that Jamaica was to have shared a charter flight with the Suriname national team back to Jamaica on Saturday night. However, Jamaica is alleged to have failed to have come up with their share of the cost of the flight.
Oh.
So I think they're still in Suriname, and they play tomorrow in Jamaica.
Well, I'm glad CONCACAF forced all these teams and nations to play competitive fixtures without understanding the cost behind it.
Growing pains,
Good job,
man.
CONCACAF.
Got to grow up.
Anyway, we had a full stadium in Kansas City last night, so we
did have a full stadium, so can't complain about that. It's the best opponent they've played in a long time. I think there has been a few people who do not understand how good Uruguay is, and they rotated a lot. But I think you got some good things out of it.
Is still pretty good.
Exactly. It doesn't mean it's not good. And the U.S. wasn't at 100% either. I think that has to be reminded to everybody as well. It was a good game for them to get, and probably the last really good game they're going to get before they see Wales.
Well, on that front, there is a rumor coming from several people, but Berhalter has confirmed that we'll play 2 matches, friendly matches in Europe in that September window. One of the names that continually comes up is Japan. So a very solid team,
good one.
World Cup bound team. The other one is Saudi Arabia, obviously not as good as the others, but I've also heard Argentina. So
I had heard that before because remember Mexico and Argentina were all but set to play in LA in September. And then they got drawn into the same group. So that got thrown out. And I have not heard anything about Argentina rescheduling.
I have still seen the Argentina name come up. Now, I'm not sure why Argentina would want to travel to Europe for that, other than the fact that a lot of their players also play in
Most
Europe,
of their players are there.
The U.S. would do it as well.
Yeah, same thing.
And I think it would also I know Berhalter loves to, mimic windows. It would kind of mimic that travel that people would have. So, but I even if it's not Argentina, you're right. Uruguay was a fantastic team to play because they're just talented up and down the field. I did not realize that Muslera and Edson Cavani were the same age because they don't look the same age. I just needed to throw that out there. But it was also a team that plays very similarly to the way that Wales and probably Iran are going to play, where they're going to be much more defensive minded because they have some attacking options that are better than anything the U.S. could ever hope to have and better than most teams will have, so that was a good setup as well. And we saw 2 halves of Uruguay playing different soccer. The first half was a little bit more front footed. The second half was definitely a much more what we're used to seeing from Uruguay, a more defensive posture. So it was a good test for the team. And look, you got a 0-0 draw without also using your best players, and that to me is a positive.
So then, Bart, I know that when we were leading into talking about this particular match, we talked about the front and the back. What do you want to talk about first, the front or the back?
Well, the back was not very good. Specifically, the fullbacks weren't very good. And I think we can just get that out of the way real quick because both Joe Scally, who in his first start at 19 years old did not look very good. But on the other side, DeAndre Yedlin in his 100th, whatever, I think he's almost at 100 caps, did not look very good either. And I think a lot of people are focusing on Scally because, and I'll be the first to say that as a fan, I've wanted to see Joe Scally. He's a kid who's been playing a lot of minutes in the Bundesliga for a 19-year-old American. He wasn't great. That has to be said. But DeAndre Yedlin's supposed to be your experienced, steady guy. And the things that he usually does well, he didn't do very well. And the things that we need him to just be slightly okay at, he was not very good. Defensively, he was a little bit better than Scally, but he still didn't really protect Zimmerman on that side the way that Scally didn't protect Long on that side. So I'm not even trying to really critique Zimmerman or Long this match because they were doing so much work to have to put up with two fullbacks who weren't up to the challenge. But offensively, I thought that Yedlin was really, really bad, honestly. He had a lot of touches that they weren't positive touches that went straight to the other team. And we do need those fullbacks to be able to combine with the midfielders on their side. And neither of them were really able to do that very much. And that was disappointing because that's going to be a hallmark of a Berhalter system, no matter what formation or who's playing in those positions. And neither of those guys really achieved those goals today. But that was disappointing. I thought Long and Zimmerman were fine, all considering. Again, they had to do a lot of work. I still don't think that's our best center back pairing, but that's not my decision. And, I thought Sean Johnson was a mixed bag. I thought when it came to shot stopping, which Sean Johnson is very good at, he was a very good shot stopper. And I thought his play with his feet was weird. I think he had some bad I don't think he made bad decisions necessarily. I think he had some passes that were poorly executed. He had some passes that were really well executed. But he's also trying to play, on a regulation size field, which I know is hard for New York City players.
That can mess you up a little bit.
Had to get that in there because someone told me on Twitter the other day that it was a regulation size field, and I said false. But hey, wink, wink.
Yeah, 70 yards.
Yeah.
I want to get into something that Brian Sciaretta and the crew over at SiriusXM were talking about this morning with the number 9 position because we still don't know who it is. One thing to keep in mind is Daryl Dike they asked U.S. Soccer not to bring him in as he's recovering, give him some time off. If he starts playing well in the season at West Brom, then you're having a different conversation. Maybe he gives you something different, but nobody's claimed it.
I'm honestly not sure you do because I haven't seen Daryl Dike perform that well in a U.S. shirt either. But.
Yeah, no, nobody has. That's the thing is you're down to one of two things at this point, in my opinion. And I think one is far more likely than the other because I've seen the conversation from the professional coaches on the Bird app about how you should just be able to play Christian Pulisic as a 9, and that's what you do because that's what you do in a FIFA video game. They didn't say that last part. I'm saying that last
Tuchel did it one time, so it'll work, right?
Yeah. It's because you can just play an attacking midfielder as a 9 and everything happens the same. Or you're going to have to pick somebody. And you're looking at really at this point, what? Ferreira, Pifok, Haji Wright. I think those are the 3. Yeah. I guess Dike and Zardes would be kind of wild cards off to the side.
Yeah, don't forget about Pepe, but he hasn't been great since going to Augsburg.
Pepe would be in that mix too. But you're going to be picking them really based off how they start the season because that's all you got left. Those 2 games in September they really can't be, in my opinion, they can't be about trying to shift to playing a tactical setup with a non-traditional 9. And you can't have a Christian Pulisic as a 9 when you're going to be under pressure against some of these teams and you're going to have to play long and you're just giving possession away because Pulisic back to goal, that ain't happening. We saw that in 2014, by the way, when Clint Dempsey had to play as the 9 and he's not a target forward.
That's not what he does, right?
He can score.
We don't want Gio Reyna to do that. We don't want Christian Pulisic to do that. We don't want them to do that. We want them getting the ball, driving at players.
That's the element that people leave out of that. Is sure, you can play whoever you want in whatever position you want. But if you're going to be under pressure and you have to play long, you're going to be giving up possession and it's going to be coming right back at you because you won't have a number 9 who can keep the ball. Pifok can, you would think. These other guys can, you would think.
Pifok, Wright, and Dike are the ones who are most likely to do that. Ferreira has struggled when it comes to real competition to do that. I still think Ferreira is your starting striker.
I think so too.
And I think he backed it up yesterday because I know he missed him. And eventually, look, Jesus, eventually the ball has to go in the net. You can't continue to be literally on the goal line and somehow the ball goes behind you out into the field of play. but he's still getting in those positions. His stats yesterday weren't great, but his passing accuracy is pretty good. And that's, I think, what Berhalter prefers, that and pressing. And I think Ferreira does both of those really well. But the striker position right now is not ideal. No one is scoring for us. And it's very frustrating. I don't know who to blame necessarily, but we have a lot of strikers who score.
I don't know if there is a blame, honestly. I really don't think it's a blame. It's just sometimes this happnes.
It's frustrating. I mean, Ferreira's having a great season. Haji Wright had a great season. Pifak has come in after scoring a bunch, and none of those guys have been able to really score for the U.S. effectively or efficiently. It's frustrating.
Now, Tim Weah's name has come up from Tafka, and I've seen that name come up from others. I always wanted to see him as a 9, but he hasn't played as a 9.
That's where I am with him as well. I think this would have been a great window, even yesterday, maybe because you could have taken off Areola or taken off Ferreira, brought on Areola because apparently he had to be seen yesterday for some reason, and you could have just shifted Weah into that striker position just to see it, because I mean he does have that in his background. He has played that position before. He doesn't do it a lot anymore
exactly
for Lille. And even when he does play a striker position, it's not a lone striker kind of back to goal guy. Yeah. But I do think it's a little bit of a missed opportunity from Berhalter to at least see, I mean, can he do the things that other guys do? But I would also say that to me personally, Tim Weah is a vital feature of this attack on that right wing. And he is, I don't care what you have to say about Gio Reyna, he's my starting right wing when it comes to November 21st.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know yet, but I would like to throw this into the mix since I seem to always have the things that people want to fire back about. Who won the 2018 World Cup?
France.
Who was their starting striker?
Olivier Giroud.
How many goals did he score in the World Cup?
I think he scored 0.
That would be
0. Like 1? Yeah, okay.
0.
Yeah.
It can happen if you're facilitating for others. And I think Ferreira,
when we get Kylian Mbappe, then
well, of course,
there you go. Yeah.
But no, I mean, this is where
I don't know if DeAndre Yedlin's going to hit, or maybe Serginho Dest can hit a Benjamin Pavard winner.
But this is the thing. I mean, like Ferreira is the one who I think facilitates the best for everybody else. Exactly. I think he's the one who is the best fit. And just again, Tafka, just to be clear, what I said specifically was you might need a number 9 if you're going to have to play long because you're under pressure. That was what I was saying. Why you need a number 9 with a target forward ability. I don't think Pulisic fits as a number 9 because every time he's played it, it hasn't looked good. No. I don't think Reyna's really played it. Weah would have been interesting. I've always wanted to see him as a 9, but for whatever reason, he doesn't play as a 9. I think it's Ferreira. And the wild card would be if Pepe starts out hot, if Pifak starts out hot, if Haji Wright starts out hot in the season, and you get him some time in September and you get a look, and if it fits, then you go with it. But that's the reality at this point, because you can't be solving a bunch of problems with 2 Nations League games and 2 friendlies left, and that's it.
We're past the problem solving point. I think we can, because we're not going to solve any problems against Grenada. I'm sorry.
No. The 2 Nations League games, you're not going to solve anything.
El Salvador, maybe. You might be able to. You're not trying to run experiments against El Salvador because you need to win that game. But you can hopefully find that answer from what you think is the best option, if that makes sense. But I still think that when you look at the striker position, you have Gyasi Zardes, who has been in camp. You've had Josh Sargent, who's been in camp. Jordan Pifak has been in camp. Haji Wright now has been in camp. Daryl Dike has been in a camp. And you have Jesus Ferreira, who has been the most consistent fixture in those. So that's 6 strikers who have been a part of a U.S. camp in the past year. One of those guys is going to have to step up. And I don't think you're going to be looking at anyone different from who will play striker.
All right, so then let me ask you this, but let me go back to goal here.
Okay.
Regulation pitch Sean Johnson, and I guess that's how we should identify him going forward in these situations when he's starting for the national team. So regulation pitch Sean Johnson. has the performance that he has yesterday, and yes, I know it's a shiny object as I'm addressing this, does regulation pitch Sean Johnson's shiny object performance muddle your thoughts as to who should be starting in net because he is the only one of the four guys that we mention on a regular basis, Stefan, Turner, Horvath, and Sean Johnson, that's going to be getting anything resembling regular playing time leading into Qatar. And the reason that I mention this is because it's all about rhythm, all about starts, all about minutes, and all those kinds of things. Did that performance put him higher in the depth chart for you, or is regulation pitch Sean Johnson still your 4 with work to do?
So I don't think Sean Johnson did anything for me personally to say I am the starter. He said I can start if needed, but we've seen that from Ethan Horvath. So I don't think he separated himself much either. I want to give credit that I think that it was hit or miss with his feet, which is about what we get from Zach Steffen. And I think Sean Johnson's a better shot stopper than Steffen most of the time. But for me, Matt Turner is my starter. And we haven't seen Matt Turner come off of I wasn't playing kind of a thing. Zach Steffen has clearly struggled by not getting minutes at Manchester City.
Easy. Yeah.
Matt Turner, we haven't seen that. I also think that the strengths Matt Turner has are still things that you do in practice. He's a great shot stopper. You're going to be saving, shots in practice. I think that the things that he's not good at can actually be better during practice. I mean, he's going to be going to Arsenal, a team that has since the 1930s been the passing team of England, whatever Manchester City tries to say. They want to play with the ball from the goalkeeper's feet. And so he's going to have to learn how to do that. And that to me is a positive. Now, who knows what Ethan Horvath's actual club situation will be? I know Bryce Samba has been eyed by a lot of Premier League clubs because he is a very good goalkeeper.
They saved their bacon in the playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe Ethan Horvath does become your starter at Nottingham Forest and because Samba goes to, I don't know, any other team.
Maybe mid-table club here, yeah.
Yeah, like Manchester United. That would be something that would open up a door for Horvath. But I do think that Johnson being the only guy who's going to, right now, the only guy who will actually be starting for his club, maybe that gives him the edge to be on the plane to Qatar. I still don't think he's your starter.
I think he's your starter if Turner looks bad in September because he's not playing.
Sure.
I think that's where it changes. And that's where you're at right now. And I think we've got to throw out all of the old kind of ways of thinking about how a World Cup prep goes and understand that we've got 2 meaningless games. Sorry, CONCACAF Nations League. They're meaningless. With the 2 games you have coming up. Maybe the away game gives you a little bit of something. Whatever. You've got two friendlies in September, and that's it. And you've got that team for a week. And you get the team for after travel and everything, you're going to get the bulk of your players with 5 days to prepare for game 1 in the World Cup. You don't have time for experiments. You don't have time for, let's make a big tactical change and do this. You don't. You can't go to 3 center backs very easily right now. You can't go to false nines very easily right now. And every team in the world is dealing with this. This isn't just a U.S. thing. This is everybody who, to me, outside of, I would have said France, but they didn't actually have a good week. I think France is a favorite. I think Brazil's a favorite. I think Argentina has shown they're a favorite. Outside of those teams, you're dealing with a lot of questions for pretty much everybody because of the preparation.
So what I'm learning or getting from all this is that Greg Berhalter is still going to start Zach Steffen match 1 of the World Cup.
No, I don't know about that, honestly.
Jason, I'm telling you, Greg Berhalter loves the people he loves.
He does, but hasn't Turner gotten into that?
I don't think so. I don't think he's usurped Zach Steffen. I don't think he has.
If it's Turner, I'm with you more because we haven't seen as much of it, and it's the first year of it. I'm definitely with you more on Turner being able to handle it better. I can buy into that. I need to see it in September if he doesn't play between now and then he looks bad. I think what Sean Johnson has done is he's put himself on the plane. I really do. Absolutely. Because he's going to be playing consistently. And I don't think Horvath will pass either Turner or Steffen.
I don't think, I know we'll have a slightly expanded roster for the World Cup. I don't think you're expanding by a fourth goalkeeper.
You're supposed to go to 26, but that has not been officially approved yet. And that'd be 3 more than what you're normally.
Listen, who cares? Just you can sub 7 times. You can have 27 people on the roster. By the way, I think sub limits in a friendly is the dumbest thing.
Yeah,
I don't know why we've
especially
since most leagues have gone to 5 subs and like, why are we sticking to 6 subs at a friendly? We could just
you get a card
make it 11.
over
I don't
subbing
care.
in a friendly. That's brilliant.
This is the dumbest thing ever. But this is also coming from a guy who doesn't care about subs at the youth level. I'm like, whatever, let him play. Like Georgia Soccer's rules of like, oh, well, it has to be their possession throw. And I'm like, I don't care. Georgia Soccer, your rules are stupid.
Yeah, that's a dumb rule about when you can sub. Can you sub here? Yes, we can sub here. Let's do it.
Sub. They're 10. They don't care. Get them on the field.
Last one, Bart, before we let you go. Katie Weaver, I actually disagree, Katie. I think it's the opposite because of it, but it's going to be one or the other. Katie thinks because it's such a weird run-in, you could see way more last-minute surprises on lots of rosters. I think it's going to depend on the coach. I think you're going to see either a lot of them or none, depending on the coach and how long he's been there.
I think with the U.S., there won't be any surprises. And by that, I mean, you're not going to see any new players. Yeah. You will see someone who might be a surprise because someone may have been injured or they're just not in form. Right. But it'll be someone who has been called up by Greg Berhalter during World Cup qualifying and on. You might see a guy who got called up. Like I'm thinking for, just go with me here, a James Sands. Yeah. Would that be a surprise if he makes a World Cup roster? Yeah, because I don't think he's ready for that. But it wouldn't be a shock because he's had plenty of looks from Greg Berhalter in the past year. Would it be a surprise if Brooks, I jokingly put this out on Twitter the other day. Would it be a surprise if Brooks Leonard is on the plane to Qatar? If you have DeAndre Yedlin playing like crap and, Reggie Cannon isn't healthy. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios, but it's that type of thing where I don't think it will be a surprise, but the surprise will be, well, we have 2 guys injured, so we have to bring someone who's a right.
Yeah, that's different, right?
Not, we called up. There's not going to be a Julian Green, right? Also because we don't have a coach who thinks he's better than the best player to play for this program. But anyway, we won't have that type of surprise, at least with the U.S. because I don't think many coaches want to make that leap of faith on a guy who hasn't really proven themselves.
Yeah, I think it's going to be – you might get some coaches who do that, Katie. It could happen. I don't see Berhalter being one. I don't think Tata Martino will be one. I don't think John Herdman will be one in Canada.
Specifically with Tata and Berhalter, they have a specific way that they need their teams to operate on the field, and they're not bringing in someone who doesn't know that. Especially Berhalter. I mean, I know the capital T, capital S trademark system is not really the same, but the system is still there.
Yeah, it is.
The patterns of play are still very much ingrained, and we know that Tata does that as well. We heard stories about that. You hear Bobby and you hear Mikey and you hear everyone who's ever played for a Tata at Atlanta United talk about how much they drilled specific patterns of play.
Yeah.
So, I don't think we're seeing that from either one. Herdman maybe, but it'll be. I doubt that it'll be something that's super surprising. It might just be, this kid's been really good this month, so we got to bring him. But
we'll get the South American perspective on this from Tom Robinson in just a second. But, But Katie, what I want to clarify is when I say surprise, I'm not including injuries as creating a surprise. That would happen in whatever format. I'm saying that I don't think you get Julian Green was a really good example. I don't think you get that player who has barely appeared for the national team getting a call up here because I just don't think they're going to have time to earn it. I just don't, unless there's injuries, and that's a whole different conversation. If there's injuries and you don't have somebody who's been in the mix and you got to go outside the box, and there'll probably be somebody who's on the roster and doesn't play.
Like dude 28, 29 on a 26 roster or something like that. The end of the bench guys that we always see.
Yeah.
Well, if they're 28 or 29 and it's 26, they're not going to even be able to be on the bench.
They might be number 28 and 29 right now. Maybe. That's the question.
They might be begging for one of those spots, friends and family tickets from Canada.
Yes,
maybe they're trying to get one of those.
Maybe that's what it is.
True.
Yeah. I would say Brooks has barely appeared, Kevin, because he's got one cap.
John Brooks or Brooks Lennon?
Brooks Lennon, I would assume.
Oh, yeah. He's got the one cap, and he was in that pre-qualifying camp.
I think it's bad luck for him that he had the injury, but it's going to be tough. Anyway, we could go on and on. I think we've learned what about the U.S. quickly, Bart?
I think we've learned that they're capable.
A good word. That is a good word. And I totally agree with that. I feel better about
0 goals to 2 World Cup bound teams. I think that alone is a positive.
Yeah. I feel better about it after these 2 games. We will talk maybe after the 2 Nations League games because I don't know how much we're going to learn about them.
I mean, I don't think we're going to learn much about this team on Friday against Grenada. Come out to Fido and watch with American Outlaws. We do free shots for every goal. So that will be a good one to attend.
That day.
We're 5-minute walk to Marta. So there
also
you go.
Good to know.
Yes.
But I think the El Salvador game it'll be a nice repeat of what we had to start World Cup qualifying. And it'll be a good little benchmark to see where we are from where we started not even a year ago. Gosh, it's been it feels like it's been 7 years crammed into one. No wonder people are getting injured left and right.
It's been short and long at the same time. It's absurd. Bart, thanks for the time. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Be good.
Make sure you're following at Bartimus Prime 19 on your social media platforms. Let's get friend of the show, Tom Robinson, back on. It's been a minute, Tom. How have you been?
Yeah, not too bad at all. Thanks, guys. How have you been?
Good. We're trying to make sense of the U.S. men's national team over here. And, our neighbors to the north and south are having all kinds of issues. Canada is boycotting games right now because they can't get along with their federation. And Mexico can't score a goal. And Tata Martino's in all kinds of trouble in Mexico. I want to ask you the question that Katie brought up from the Twitch pitch. And I've kind of gone back and forth on it. I think it's going to be maybe dependent on the manager. And in the U.S. case, I'm not expecting a lot of changes. But with such a weird run-up to the World Cup, it feels like in the past we would see somebody coming off of a great season. It'd get that month-long camp ahead of the World Cup, and it'd be a little bit of a surprise by the time we got to it. With this run-up, with games now, with a week in September, and then maybe for a lot of teams a week prior to their first game, are you expecting as much of that, or are you expecting the teams pretty much as you're seeing them right now being the teams we see in the World Cup, barring injury?
Yeah, I think for a lot of teams, it's going to be what they're able to do now, what they've been building up to do now. I think the momentum is going to be such a big buzzword, as it always is in these tournaments. But the teams that, rather than playing their way in, getting a bit of good vibes before the tournament and sort of coming into it flying, I think we're going to see the teams that are already close to the finished article being the ones that you've really got to watch out for. I mean, yes, there's always chances of surprise, and there's all those intangibles that you can never, you never account for. But I think, certainly from my perspective, and I'm sure something we'll be talking about, the way things are going for Argentina right now, you think if they can maintain this amazing atmosphere in the squad and just pray that no one gets injured, then that's got to count for a whole lot more than, teams that feel like they need to build themselves up a little bit.
Yeah, it's what Argentina's doing right now. It's just wow. I want to start with Uruguay, though, because we've seen them here in this country for the last week. They had a dominant performance over Mexico. Could have been worse than 3-0. And then the scoreless draw with the U.S. We've talked about it from the U.S. and Mexico perspective. How do you think Uruguay is feeling these days with Diego Alonso still undefeated since taking over?
Yeah, well, I think that's the key thing there, isn't it? The undefeated stat they've currently got there is meaning that positivity is sort of flowing back into the national team. When certainly the way that qualification was going, there was a lot of negativity of as much as everything that Tabares has done for us, if we hung on to him a little bit long here, there's a feeling of things are going stale. Whereas now, yes, the fixture list played into their hands a little bit in terms of finishing off the qualification in good form. But yeah, I think there's that whole optimism and that hope and that idea of renewal and new players coming into the mix. Certainly we saw that in the last game for Uruguay, a lot of new faces being tried and tested and sort of saying, okay, yeah, we know who our starting 11 is going to be, the main guys for us, your Fede Valverde's, Suarez and Cavani going out with a bang, hopefully for them. But playing guys, the new generation coming through, your Darwin Nunez, Manuel Ugarte, lots of guys getting a bit of a run out there in that game. So I think they're showing that, okay, yeah, they didn't get another win, but if they can go toe to toe with other World Cup squads there and yeah, more than hold their own, then that's showing good strength and depth for a situation that beforehand was looking like their first team was struggling to do. So yeah, I think the general mood is optimistic, as it always is when you've got a new man in charge.
I know that we look and we naturally gravitate, Tom, toward Brazil and Argentina. And a lot of folks have them in that order. And, I want to talk about surprises a little bit. Who could surprise outside of Brazil and Argentina in your mind? Is it an Uruguay that could surprise, or is somebody else on your radar?
Well, I think probably when I'm thinking of surprises, it's going to be Ecuador, just because I don't know what to expect from them. I think they're going to surprise me, let alone people who haven't watched much of them, because on one hand, I think most people would look at it and say, okay, the Netherlands, Senegal are going to be hard to get past, and Qatar might have that home advantage as well. But the chat certainly over in Europe just never even really touches on Ecuador at all. It's not they're being depreciated or undervalued. They're just kind of not really a topic of conversation. So I think people are going to be like, even if it's just saying, oh wow, Gonzalo Plata's fun to watch and absolutely terrifying fullbacks, or Moises Caicedo and Piero Hincapié are looking like real talents for the future. I think that if we see the Ecuador that they can be, then they could definitely put a cat amongst the pigeons there and really cause some problems for any of those teams. My big worry is that because it's a first time for a lot of these young players, they might be a bit overruled by the situation, a bit like we saw Peru in the last World Cup. That's my kind of big worry. But if they click, we know that when they can click, they can be pretty unstoppable. So they're the team that I'm most looking forward to, because I don't know which Ecuador is going to show up myself.
It's funny you mentioned Peru, because that's, as you were describing the European reaction, I kind of felt like it would be like Peru in 2018, where it was the same thing. It's like people didn't really know what to expect. Not really much conversation about them. It's like, oh yeah, this is a good team to watch. These are games you have to see. I've said it about Ecuador. I think people who listen to SDH and from our friends Modaflow and Perfect Tommy, who are big Ecuador fans, we've talked about Moises Caicedo for a while. We've talked about some of these talented players. You're seeing more in MLS now than ever before. It feels like Ecuador is. I've said it as one of the, if you're a neutral and Ecuador's on, you should watch, because it's going to be an entertaining game. And I think it's kind of perfect timing for them, with Caicedo and Hincapié really breaking through right now. They're kind of at the peak of their powers, and some of the talent around them. I think maybe the difference, and this is the question about comparing them to Peru of 18, is somebody like Alfaro as the manager seems like a really steadying influence. I think he's a very different personality than Gareca, who I love, but I think Alfaro might be able to bridge that gap with some of these young guys in a moment where maybe they could get overawed. Maybe he can keep their feet on the ground. Yeah,
he definitely plays into that. The type of manager who prefers that underdog role. We've seen it with the teams that he's been most successful with, have definitely been those who can be solid, break quickly. And I think that was maybe the question of more so of qualification. Was he really going to get the best out of this team? But I think we've seen with plenty of time in the past, sometimes when Ecuador have their best players, they sometimes need that slightly more defense-minded manager to strike the nice balance between the talent they've got and being a successful outfit rather than just being allowed to go all out attack. So it's kind of certainly I think he's surprised a lot of people with how successful he's been. The way things finished up in qualification is a little bit of a downer on things. But I think it's because they knew they were going to be there. They weren't you just lose that couple of percent, which make all the difference. But yeah, he's definitely done well. Maybe the one thing that we can maybe not criticize him for, but that could maybe not be the best scenario for him is that when he has come up in those sort of big games, he's maybe not found ways to win them. Whereas Gareca, obviously a manager who's had loads of experience with real crucial games at top level. So I'll be interested to see if things go badly, if Alfaro can turn it around and what he does there. But if he, if they can strike the first blow-in games, then that's going to play exactly into their game plan.
So let's get into Brazil a little bit. They had the win this morning in Japan, 1-0 penalty that Neymar converted. They went to South Korea and won 5-1. These are their first games since the qualification process ended. Is Brazil your number one team going into the World Cup?
Number one from South America, certainly.
Okay.
I think there's certainly got to be amongst the two or three favourites for the whole thing as well, just because how consistent they are, what a settled side, a settled management status. Everything about them is sort of world class throughout their team. Maybe not the fullbacks, but apart from that, the spine of the team is incredible in terms of first 11 and backups as well. And it feels like they've been a side who've, while sort of slowly grinding their way through the qualification process, really kind of started to let loose in the final few games. Again, I don't think that's necessarily due to pressure being off, but I think they were just sort of allowed to try some things out. They've got some really exciting players. Vinicius Junior showing in the Champions League final. What a big player he's become now on the world stage, and you've got other younger players like Anthony coming through who could really light up the tournament as well. So I think they've got to be the favourites just because of what a European style team that they're kind of built and molded into there. So I think they're not going to be someone who stylistically are going to be out of place with those top European sides. And yeah, you can't look past them. Even if I'm more excited about Argentina right now and they have the feels of a cup team that could really light things up, maybe the one thing you'd say about Brazil is when, they're probably going to get through the group stage with relative ease. When they come up against that big defining European matchup in the quarterfinals or the semi-finals, are they going to be able to switch it up and take it to that extra level, or are they going to find themselves pipped on the small margins and that feeling again of, we've not really come out of third gear here and we know there's more, but you don't get that many chances to really show it. So Brazil should be the number one South American favourites and right up there, is maybe first favourites, maybe second, maybe third. But certainly I think there's more excitement around Argentina right now.
So then who, and this could even qualify for a national team that hasn't met expectations. They're always there. They're a part of the discussion, but they always hit that brick wall when that moment is there. Who is under the most pressure as a country in your mind in this World Cup? Is it Brazil? Is it Argentina? Are they 1A, 1B? Is it someone in that second level who's always run into the brick wall? Who's dealing with the most pressure as a team, do you think?
I mean, it's got to be Brazil, really. The expectation is always to win it. It's a country's football that, as much as we like to think of it as Jogo Bonito, it is pretty merciless and ruthless when it comes to you've got to win no matter what. I think Argentina is now getting to the stage where expectations are rising and rising and rising, and maybe to a level that becomes unsustainable, really, in terms of what the players are able to deliver, and just some of those intangibles we mentioned before. I think if you'd asked people a few years ago, then a run to the semi-finals would have been good, and I think that still would be seen as a good tournament. But yeah, especially after the win against Italy, where it's like okay, we've beaten the European champions, albeit a team that's not made the last 2 World Cups, but still a good team there. It's now like, we want the World Cup to start now, and we're ready for it. And it doesn't take much for the Argentinian national team support to suddenly get very confident. And I think the good thing is, at least with the players, they've got that monkey off their back in terms of winning something. So they feel that they look like they're playing with less pressure than perhaps they would have done before. They're playing with a smile on their face. Whereas I think Brazil and the likes of Neymar, they've yet to really bring back a big trophy. And we saw how that pressure got to them on home soil. We've seen how they've sort of cracked up in big moments as well. So I think that's something that plays into Argentina's favor as well. I think even if they, I think quarterfinals has got to be a bare minimum, and people would be a bit gutted. But I think as long as they give it a good go, and they're all pulling for Messi, then I think there's a good chance that they're not going to be, waiting for them at the airport with pitchforks or anything like that.
Yeah, I feel like Brazil, it's win or bust. I feel like Argentina is a little different because you have that Copa America in the bag, and it's not the World Cup, but it has been a pretty special ride. Who out of Europe are you putting in that class? Because I've got Argentina maybe slightly behind Brazil. Coming into the summer, I would have had Brazil, France, maybe a Germany, maybe an England, and have Argentina right in that next tier as a team that could win it, but maybe isn't a favorite. Who else are you looking at in Europe or anywhere else that could be a favorite to win this time around?
Well, I think another team that's got a huge amount of pressure on them would be Belgium, because again, they've got a very talented squad, and again, usually don't have this many good players to choose from, and there's definitely a feeling of time running out for the always unhelpful golden generation tag there. I mean, obviously, England are going to fancy themselves as a certainly maybe not the favourites, but again, someone who would be aiming for a semi-final. I think for me, as much as Southgate has done wonders for the national team and the image of the national team, and there's definitely a good feeling about that. Again, I think he's the type of guy who will maybe get you further than previous managers have done, but I'm not sure he's quite bold enough to go on and win the thing.
You think he's hit a ceiling as far as he can take England?
Yeah, maybe. I think that with a different manager, England could easily crash out at the quarterfinals, and
also
go through that same thing. I think the fact getting to a semi-final or final it is an achievement, and the last 2 big tournaments have been amazing for anyone over here. But I think it's hard to criticize him because he's already sort of gone down as one of the more successful managers that we've had. But I just get the feeling that his slight conservatism, given the players at his disposal, means that once you get to those crucial crunch matches, it's maybe just going to be one step too far. And then again, Spain as well, you've got to throw them in the mix there of teams that could go far and do well as well.
Yeah, Spain's one that I would not have thought would have been in that conversation, but I think they've played their way into it now. I think what Luis Enrique has done with a really young group is really impressive. I think maybe they're in that second tier. Maybe Argentina's advanced into the first tier by now with the win over Italy and just how they've looked. There's still a little bit of time before we get there. There's not going to be a ton of games, but there's still a little bit of time before we get there. We'll definitely have to break all of it down after that September window. I want to get into some of the South American club game with you and get caught up on some things. Boca gets the Copa de la Liga in Argentina. We've got the new league season underway now. Is it kind of usual suspects in Argentina to pay attention to, or is there anybody else who's grabbed your eye?
Yeah, again, Boca and River are always going to be up there. Certainly River have got the most star-studded and exciting squad in the league.
As long as Gallardo and Becasese don't brawl after the game like they tried to do last night, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. If they can keep their tempers in check, then hopefully they should be all right there. And yeah, so again, they're obviously going to be right up there as the favourites. Obviously, you've got that slight caveat of if someone goes deep in the continental tournaments, then that's going to be the priority, and the league will take a backseat. But and also Gallardo's tended to focus on the cup competitions more than the league. So again, that's probably something that maybe disadvantages River, because I think looking at their sort of draw in the knockout stage of the Libertadores, you'd fancy them probably get to the semi-finals at least there. I think the teams that stood out most in the Copa de la Liga, that maybe you wouldn't as associate as always the favourites, would be Estudiantes, who were really solid. They've got a really defensively organised team. They're great on set pieces. They don't concede many, and they've now got enough firepower to actually put the ball in the back of the net and come up with quite a formidable team to play against that no one's really going to fancy. So I think they could be a team that is definitely right up there, and Racing would be the other obvious candidate at the moment with the lovely football that Gargo's got them playing. Yeah. Easily I think the team that everyone thought was going to win the Copa de la Liga, edged out on penalties by Boca, and then obviously very surprisingly crashed out with the Sudamericana after it looked like it was just going to be a routine get the result against Uruguayan River Plate, and they'd be in the next round. But fair play to Melgar for pushing them all the way. But certainly I think if they've not got that continental football to worry about, Racing could really put a good run of form together and be the ones to catch. And if they can get off to a good start, and the likes of Boca or River or Estudiantes are tied up with Libertadores, then it might be too much of a mountain for them to claw back.
You mentioned Gago. I wanted to follow up on him really quick because he was mentioned when he retired. He was mentioned as joining Gabriel Heinze's staff here in Atlanta for a rumor really quick. He takes the job at Aldosivi, a small club. Some really interesting games. I mean, I tried to keep an eye on him there. He talked about how much he learned from Heinze during the end of his career. And Gago is just one of those players that maybe, not enough people know and how great he was. There's definitely positional play elements in what he's doing, but it feels like it's coming a little more from the kind of the Pep school of things, where it's not as rigid as Heinze's positional play interpretation. I think he's still rough around the edges, but Fernando Gago could be maybe that next great manager, along with possibly Mascherano, who's done well with the U20s. Those next great guys who were great players for the national team, but could take that step as great young managers.
Yeah, he's definitely well within that conversation now. As you said, Aldosivi, I think everyone had eyes on that just to see how that would go because of his name.
Yeah.
But what really impressed me, I mean, again, it was just how quickly you could see the style being imprinted on that side. You looked at a lot of the metrics and, okay, they were right down at the bottom of the table and not winning that many games, but you always felt that they were giving it a good go, and he just didn't have the players to play it out from the back. The amount of times you'd see them try, you could see what they were trying to do, and then they would just, lose it very close to their own goal, and other teams would, more savvy teams would just take advantage of that. And it feels like there's a similar vibe of when Crespo was at Banfield, and you could see the football was decent and what he was trying to do, but that little bit of bad luck or not quite having the same players. Obviously, Crespo's career path has been a bit of a wild one since then, but again,
I don't get it.
Yeah, it's but I feel like Gago's maybe got his head screwed onto more of a maybe traditional path, and he's looking like someone who's obviously, he's always been a very intelligent, well-spoken player, very thoughtful player. And he's bringing that into the management game as well. And as you said, there's this whole breed of, big name players who were stars for the national team, stars for some of the biggest clubs in the country, who've obviously had good European careers and are coming back now and imparting that wisdom. You feel like it's modernizing things. So many of them are involved in the national team setup, be it Pablo Aimar, Walter Samuel, Diego Placente, that, there's a whole list as long as your arm of players that you think, oh yeah, if they're half as good managers as they were players, then Argentina is going to continue that great tradition it's got of producing coaches. So yeah, Gago's 100% put himself in the in the spotlight there as a name to watch. But this would be interesting to see how he follows up on those disappointments, and if he can get Racing firing again, because yeah, certainly first half of the year they were the standout team in the league.
So now that we've talked about managers a little bit, I want to get into players. And I guess as one of our unofficial Soccer Down Here directors of South American recruiting to expand the game internationally, who have been some of the players that have caught your eye early on in the season that folks can gravitate toward, who might be jumping into the leagues for the first time, watching teams for the first time? Who are some of those younger players or some of those below the radar players that have really caught your eye so far?
Yeah, so I mean, the obvious, I'm sure most listeners have probably heard of Julian Alvarez, so I won't go into too much detail, especially when he's scoring, 6 goals against Alianza Lima, which was pretty incredible. But Enzo Fernandez has been the player of the first half of the year. Like we've known for a while, he's a very good player, but he's added goals to his game, and he's outshone Alvarez, I would say, in the last 6 months, and now there's a whole host of really big European clubs looking to take him on board. So he's obviously a name to watch. Other than that, you've got Carlos Alcaraz from Racing, 19-year-old with just that elite mentality that means that he's also going to go right to the top. I think a lot of, again, I think Spurs, Wolves, both Milan clubs have been linked with him quite heavily. So he's one to watch as well. There's a lot to like about Vélez at the moment. They're always a team that produces a ton of young talent, but they've got a young sort of deep lying midfielder, kind of a bit like Gago actually himself, Maxi Perrone, really elegant player, just got that wand of a boot. He can spread it around, and he's popped up with some really big moments already. With he scored the winner in the 3-2 win over Nacional, which put Vélez on course for qualifying from the group stage, which they did. 19. I think he was even wearing the captain's armband by the end of that game. So he's someone who I think Man City and Real Madrid have already been sniffing around for quite a while. And yeah, he's someone who's very exciting. But there's a lot more at Vélez as well. You've got Valentin Gomez, who's a centre back, maybe someone who's not got as big profile, and maybe you could see more likely as a target for MLS clubs, for example. But you've also got Julian Fernandez, again a nice tricky midfielder. Santiago Castro, who's a under-20 international, who was scoring a few goals at the Toulon tournament recently, and even younger than that, Prestiani, a 16-year-old who got his debut in the Libertadores. I think the second youngest after Sergio Aguero to get Argentinian to get a debut in the Libertadores, and he was lighting things up for the Argentina under-17. So
I saw him there, and he really jumped out to me.
He's fun. He's a lot of fun. Just that classic, Potrero player, just dribbling and having a lot of, fun on the wings there. So I think if anyone just wants to watch Vélez, then that's always a solid bet for a team. And we've mentioned Facundo Farias before.
Yeah, his name came up as being, his agent is saying that Roma and Porto are the teams that are in the forefront to sign him right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think his agent, I'm not a huge fan of him. I think he's he's handled things quite badly. Certainly, he was close or very, heavily linked to both Boca and River in the last window, and I think he's a kid who's I'm not sure if he's lost both of his parents, but certainly lost his mum quite young, and I don't think this agent is the best guy for his career development right now, because he's super talented, but you could see at the start of the year his performances were a bit affected, and you kind of worried that was all the hype getting to him, was he having the right people around him? But yeah, he's someone who is definitely in that sort of top 3 or 4 young players that you think is probably likely to go to Europe now. But yeah, lots and lots of good young players coming through in the last sort of 6 months or so, and I'm sure we're going to see a ton of other good young players. I could probably be here for 3 hours just talking about all the different ones. So I'll stop there for the time being. I want to keep my powder a bit dry.
One other one that was brought up on the Twitch pitch, Coco was asking about Nicolas de la Cruz. I know his name keeps coming up about possible moves, and it has for it's like 3 years going on now, but he hasn't moved yet. What is it looking like is next for De La Cruz?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think he's good enough, and he's someone who's always been a real talent, and maybe not so much in the last 6 months. He's not been as much of a protagonist, but certainly last year he was feeling like he was getting back to his best and really being a difference maker for River. So now that he's sort of approaching mid-20s, it's a real surprise that no one's come in for him yet. Maybe the price is just that little bit too high.
Well, it's actually really funny, Tom, because I have Teise on over to my right, and they're actually talking about De La Cruz right now, and his situation is really weird. Liverpool of Uruguay owned 70% of his pass, and I know at one point there was this back and forth about River Plate buying it out, but they didn't. They've kept him, but the president of Liverpool in Uruguay is now saying that based on the information that they have, or I guess whatever interest they have, he's going to be sold to Europe in the summer window.
Yeah, I mean, that feels like the right... It's one of those scenarios that you get with a lot of Uruguayan clubs who retain quite big percentages of their players. Allows River to have a great player that they might not have been able to get from that cut, straight away without him going straight to Europe. So it feels like it's time for him to jump. I suppose the one thing for River is they're selling Julian Alvarez. They're probably going to sell Enzo Fernandez as well. Obviously a bit more money coming in is fine, and they've got the attacking players to sort of step in and fill the boots. But that was the one thing that I would think maybe they don't need to sell him right now. But if Liverpool, we've got to congratulate them on just winning the Apertura in Uruguay there as well. They're probably looking to cash in. They've got another young player, Fabricio Diaz, who's the Uruguay under-20 captain, and has got on the fringes of the Uruguay national team as well, who's a real player who I think will be the next person after De La Cruz to make some big money for that club as well. So keep an eye on him too.
River's so interesting business-wise because, I mean, they've done this deal with De La Cruz, which they didn't have to pay very much up front to get him. They've definitely benefited from having him. But then with those outgoing moves, you've got Barco there on loan. You've got Pochettino there on loan. You've been able to find a lot of ways to keep a very strong squad together without paying as much money as you normally would have to do. And you've got Gallardo for one more year for the rest of this year, and the rumors keep heating up on him. It feels like River this year is built to win the Libertadores again and probably win the league, although I'm with you. I think Libertadores will take precedent. What's after this for River? Because Gallardo's not coming back for another year, right?
Well, probably not, but I've seen him renew once or twice more than I was expecting to him. But it does feel that there's a sense more than ever now of finality of, right, let's have one last dance, one big push and get all these guys in and really go for it. And, they've got a good chance there. Obviously, coming up against Vélez in the next round, it's going to be tricky, but they should get the job done. Same can be said against whoever the winner of Colón versus Talleres is as well. So, you're looking at a River Plate semi-final at the very least, and then, you're in the territory where anything can happen. So it feels like if he could get this, then surely he's got to be moving on after that. I think the good thing for River at least is that while no one's ever going to match up to Gallardo coming in, he's left his DNA and River's DNA in such a good position in terms of if someone comes in and they pick a right guy who's of a similar style, a similar type of person, then the youth setup's great. There's such a good culture around the club that I think that without tweaking too much, they could still be competitive, if not hitting the same heights that Gallardo did. So yeah, I certainly don't worry about River as a club, but yeah, if Gallardo does stick around, you wonder, like, okay, have you maybe missed the boat of going for one of these big European jobs, and you kind of think that maybe maybe he's happy being that kind of Ferguson-esque figure at River Plate, and then sort of eyeing up a national team job or something like that instead. So it will be interesting, but yeah, it feels like he's got to go, right?
Yeah, it's a fascinating one. I want to end with this. I'm not sure how much you've seen on the detail of it over here, but Miguel Angel Ramirez out in Charlotte, he issued his statement over the weekend about it a few days after he was let go, caught everybody by surprise. Nobody saw it coming. What do you think is next for him?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Certainly, obviously, there's a lot of, as I'm sure you know, chat about certain players being unhappy with him, and I think he's even sort of admitted himself there that he's still relatively new in the game and sort of got a lot to learn himself. I mean, I think he's maybe not lived up to the expectations that a lot of people had to him after Independiente del Valle, and you wouldn't be surprised to see him sort of dip back into the South American market again. Although I think that he's done enough and he's had enough experiences that he could get himself a sort of a job, maybe at a sort of lower half club back in Spain or something like that. I think his profile is significantly high enough now. Whether it's quite as high as it was, probably not, but certainly still going to be a young manager to keep an eye on. But I think there's certainly, after the whole Independiente del Valle success there, I think there was always that sense of how much is this the manager really showing how good he is, or just yet another sign of Independiente being such a good environment to work in over there. I think it's maybe showing up that it's more of the latter, and maybe not quite as much as the former as most people were sort of trumpeting after that. So I'll be definitely intrigued to see where he goes, but it could be anywhere, I think, really.
Who gets another club job next? Coco asks. Ramirez or Heinze?
I mean, yeah, I'd say Heinze, I feel, is due a move back to Argentina to renew his, or repair his reputation. I think, again, he might be looking at some of those jobs that could become available in the next 6 months or so, and certainly you could see him at one of the grandes in Argentina. So yeah, I think Heinze is more likely to be back in South America and back in Argentina than Ramirez. But again, I'd love to see Ramirez come across to Argentina and try his luck there as well.
That would be fascinating. Let's get them both down there and have all the fireworks. Becca says they can hang out with them. I'm sure that'll go well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. All the good things. What are you working on these days, and where can people follow you?
So yeah, just doing lots of little bits. We've got the Pinnacle podcast that come out monthly on the South American Soccer Insights. There's a piece for Y Scout up on Mateuzinho, a Brazilian right back at Flamengo, who's had quite a good year or so now, and is looking like a good prospect. And we should have a World Football Index podcast coming out soon too. Just looking at looking back at the Libertadores, looking forward to some of those. Certainly the Peru game, and looking forward to other South American continental competition. So lots of stuff going on. So keep it posted on my Twitter at TomRow89. You'll be able to find all the good stuff there.
Awesome. Tom, thanks so much for the time. We'll be talking again soon, okay?
My pleasure. Speak soon, guys.
Be good.
Make sure you're following him, Tom Rabo89, on the social medias. John, you got to tell us about our good friends over at Eliminize.
I can certainly do that. QR code is back in Atlanta, so you'll be able to see that tomorrow over my left shoulder for those of you watching on Twitch.
Tonight on Soccer Over There.
That's true. Absolutely true. So tonight on Soccer Over There, and then tomorrow in this same time slot over my left shoulder for those of you watching on Twitch.
Not tomorrow in the same time slot.
Oh, that's right.
We're not going to be busy in
the
same time slot.
We have programming tomorrow, so it's Wednesday. This is what happens when you travel. So Wednesday in the same time slot for those of you watching on Twitch over my left shoulder when I'm back in the office in Atlanta. Odor-free, clean, fresh air. One place you need to go. It's Eliminize service to get rid of all of the odors in your house. One place you need to go. It's Eliminize. Realtors and property managers go to Eliminize service to help them rent or turn their facilities that much faster so they can be a part of this whole process for you. Very, very green way of going about things. Very kind to the environment. Different than our favorite masking agents that we have under the sink, because when you go under your favorite sink where those masking agents live and you sit there and you take the masking agent, you spray it out over the air, guess what? That's what a masking agent is. It just masks over the odor. It doesn't attack the issue all the way down to the molecule like our friends at the Eliminize service do. It's a very turnkey process that helps out realtors and property managers turn those facilities that much faster. Do us a favor. For results in 24 hours or less, guaranteed, go to their website, eliminize.com. But do us a favor here at SDH. After the .com, go /Atlanta so they know what part of the world that you are addressing them from. So your full homework assignment, ELIMINIZE.com/Atlanta. Eliminize.com/Atlanta for odor-free, clean, fresh air. Eliminize service, proud sponsors of everything on a by-time zonal Monday on SDH.
Mm-hmm. That's one way to put it. Is the internet usually this bad in Alabama?
Is it what?
Exactly.
Is the internet
usually this bad? Or are you using a potato as a camera?
It's probably the lighting that is creating the potato effect.
It's not lighting, John. It's not lighting.
Well, the triangle lighting that I have here has washed things out. And as you've been noticing during the show, I've been sitting here trying to come forward or backward to try to come up with focus and all this kind of things, and not have to completely washed out. So
you might have eyes. I can't 100% tell.
They exist. They're right here.
It's possible. I don't. Anyway,
possible.
Yeah, Alabama internet's got some work to do. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yes, it does. That is accurate, sir. Especially in a town 20 miles north of Dothan, Alabama. I will agree.
I would think they would have internet. Maybe not. Other things on the board. Again, Soccer Over There tonight. We'll get deeper into a lot of the stuff. On the MLS front, Edison Flores is linked with a move back to Liga MX, and Atlas, who have won back-to-back titles. Cesar Luis Merlo reporting this. Stephen Goff also following up on it. Goff said it is a low transfer figure. Merlo thinks that DC could be open to moving him now. It would open up a designated player spot. He has not been what DC expected. I don't think DC has been what DC expected. I don't put really a whole lot of that on Flores. Interesting just to see if they decide to cash in and get whatever they can here, or if they hold out for a bigger number on somebody who hasn't been the greatest of fits. We'll just have to wait and see. RSL, Damir Kreilach, he has undergone a successful surgical procedure on his lower back. He's 33. Back injuries at 33, not a good sign. 5 games, 3 starts this season before he got hurt. 298 minutes. Exact timeline to be determined in the coming weeks. Not expected to be back this season, although that is not 100% finalized. A couple of things on the U.S. men's national team we didn't get to with Bart. 18 clean sheets in their last 24 home games dating back to October of 2019. They've only allowed 7 goals in those 24. Again, a wide range of opponents. You're talking Nations League, you're talking qualifying, you're talking friendlies. But 7 goals in 24 at home, not too shabby. Berhalter yesterday on Yunus Musa, a player we didn't get too deep into with Bart, but somebody that is growing and growing, because when he was first starting to get the appearances for the national team, I thought he was very raw. I didn't think he was quite ready yet. He had a couple of bad performances that we talked about, and he's definitely grown since then. Berhalter said Yunus is a guy that just blows me away at his age, what he can do, crazy level of talent. We need to work with Yunus on his final product, the final pass, the finishing, because he has a huge ceiling. On the women's front, Catarina Macario, ACL knee injury, last game of the French season, going to miss the CONCACAF W Championship in July in Monterrey. That will be qualifying for the World Cup and for the 2024 Olympics. So awful timing for an injury for Macario. We'll talk a lot more about Wales and Ukraine. Wales' first time back to the World Cup since 1958. A lot of the story has been Ukraine, as it should be. An incredible run for them to get to this point and be 90 minutes away. But for Wales, the special generation that they have right now, with what they've done in the Euros, what they've done with qualifying for a World Cup, again, first time since 58. That's who the U.S. will face in game one. Not going to be easy, especially if Gareth Bale is well rested from his golf excursions. Yeah. We'll get into Nations League in Europe tonight. We talked a lot about Canada at the beginning, mentioned the Jamaican situation. We'll try to get an update on that for you tonight as well. Some of the rumors out there at this moment, because they'll probably be different by the time we get to soccer over there tonight. Looks like Liverpool and Manchester City are going to battle it out over Calvin Phillips from Leeds. They're going to offer too much money for him to stay. He's going to have to go.
Yep.
Liverpool have rejected an opening £25 million bid from Bayern for Sadio Mane. Liverpool, according to Sport in Spain, have reportedly ended their interest in Gavi, 17 years old at Barcelona, who scored over the weekend for Spain. Chelsea could be looking to move 7 players out, which could earn Thomas Tuchel up to £170 million as a transfer kitty to be able to use. Bissouma of Brighton has seemingly dropped an Arsenal transfer plea on social media. Okay. Nemanja Matic will join Roma on a free transfer, according to Sky Sports, leaving Manchester United at the end of June. Played for Jose Mourinho there. Is going to play for Jose Mourinho again. Angel Di Maria, when we were talking about Argentina and what could be next for them, he is out of contract at PSG June 30. There's been talk about Juventus. It was almost seen as a foregone conclusion that he would go to Juventus. Barcelona could be getting into the mix, and Di Maria is very intrigued by Barcelona getting into the mix. Ousmane Dembele, also available on a free transfer. He could be headed to a number of places. Chelsea seems to be the one that is popping up the most lately about Dembele. Barcelona has tried to get Rafinha from Leeds. It looks like they're not going to be able to pull that off because of the price tag, which then leaves Di Maria as a pretty good short-term option available on a free. Barcelona's not exactly rolling in the dough right now, as we've talked about many times. So, yeah, I could see that. And Di Maria holding out to go there as opposed to Juventus. I think that is the right move. I think it suits his game more and could be very, very intriguing. So keep an eye on Angel Di Maria potentially to Barca. Gabriel Jesus, Real Madrid are interested in bringing him in, which is a little odd to me. But according to Jose Felix Diaz, Ancelotti is a fan of Gabriel Jesus. One more about players from South America. Bruno Henrique is potentially going to go to Fenerbahce. Now, remember, he's at Flamengo. Jorge Jesus was at Flamengo and had great success. Jorge Jesus is now at Fenerbahce. There you go. There's your dots to be connected, potentially. The situation in Italy continues to get dumber when it comes to Salernitana. Walter Sabatini, the former sporting director, according to the Salernitana president, who is now trash talking Sabatini, says that Sabatini wanted to pay a €1 million commission to Lassana Koulibaly's agent to get him to stay. The Salernitana president said, "We had a fight because I will never bend to the system. Now I read that he wants Champions League," talking about Sabatini. He wants to go to a Champions League level team. The Salernitana president said that Sabatini can't even work with a computer or send an email.
Oh,
that's kind of, yeah. That's something. In Mexico, last one from me, Tata Martino not in a great position right now. They didn't lose, but they didn't win, and they haven't scored in 2 games. The Mexican Federation has continued to say that he will be the head coach no matter what happens in these games before the World Cup, but there is a reality out there that they are working on a short list for who could be next, and that who could be next could be bumped up if they get really crazy. One of the names, and it's been confirmed by the individual that is on the short list, now this is for who's next, but again, that next could get bumped up to now if things continue to get wacky. Guillermo Almada of Pachuca. Pachuca said, when he was asked about this, he said, "It's a great honor that the Mexican national team, because they already talked to me, are aware of my work and are interested in taking over after the process of Gerardo Martino concludes. There are 2 or 3 other names on that list, but it is an honor that they have me in mind." Now, I think they were talking to him about being on the list of after the World Cup.
Yeah.
But you're not going to have 2 different lists more than likely. So keep an eye on Guillermo Almada, who will be here with Pachuca very, very soon. Not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday in the AmFam Cup. It's a friendly. There's a trophy on the line, so I have to have penalties if it's a draw. But I'm looking forward to it because Pachuca was one of the most exciting teams in Liga MX. They lost in the final to Atlas, and they have one of the most exciting young managers who could be next in line for the Mexico job, potentially, in Guillermo Almada. Tom mentioned Liverpool winning the Uruguayan Apertura over the weekend, 4 points clear at the top over Nacional, so they have clinched it. We do have some updates out of England, right, John?
We do. You mentioned Leeds. Leeds is still being very, very busy. Rasmus Christensen, we talked about him last week. He is still subject to a medical, but it looks like he's going from Red Bull Salzburg to Leeds. Insurance with the injuries to Stuart Dallas and Luke Ayling, still recovering. They may not be ready for the beginning of next season. So Christensen, for the price tag of a little over £22 million or 28 million US, subject to passing a medical. Rasmus Christensen heading from RB Salzburg to Leeds, and that just came up during the show this morning as well. So Leeds, very, very busy so far in the windows, trying to line up folks for their 22-23 season.
You didn't want to talk about Grimsby Town or Plymouth and tractors?
Well, we could. I didn't know if that was more over. I did, but I didn't know if that was more over there-ish or if we wanted to discuss it this morning. But what I will talk about is the one that we talked about before the show.
Mm-hmm.
And Walsall Football Club, which is in League Two, and I think they finished 16th in League Two this past season. They are in the process of being fully purchased by an outfit, the Travella Group. And you're sitting there saying, well, why in the wide world of sports is John talking about the Travella Group?
No, it's Anglin, John. You'd be talking about it no matter who it is.
Oh, that's true. Travella Group LLC is a sports investment firm, and they are based in Birmingham, Alabama, or as the So they will be getting a phone call from us in very short order, because I would like to have a 1v1 or perhaps a 2v1 with the folks over at Travella Group LLC as to why they were interested in a League Two England. Sorry, go ahead and do it. You're better at it. No, that's what I'm saying. You do it better than I do.
I know. I'm not a trained SEAL.
Phase 1, according to Walsall, which was executed last week, Travella has purchased 51% of the shares of Walsall Football Club and has injected additional capital directly into the club for strategic investments. That's their words. Phase 2, taking place within 2 years, Travella will acquire an additional 25% shareholding from the guy who has owned Walsall for quite a while, and bring forward additional resources to allow the club to execute the existing purchase option on the stadium and surrounding property. So Travella Group, listed as an American sports investment firm, which is building towards a multi-club ownership model in global football. Tell me if you've heard that before.
Oh, boy.
Formed in 2021 by American businessmen Benjamin Boycott and Kenneth Polk. So Benjamin Boycott and Kenneth Polk, Travella Group LLC, own a majority of Walsall right now in League Two, pursuing a multi-club ownership model in global football, and this is stage one, apparently, of that. So we will try our due diligence to catch up with our friends at Travella to find out what attracted them to Walsall and what attracted them to activity in purchasing clubs in the lower divisions of England.
We will end. What? You're just yelling random farm equipment now? I was trying to go to that instead of just yelling tractors.
Okay, well then go to it.
You know, I mean, you're going to start yelling other things here in a minute about farm equipment. Plymouth.
International Harvester. Caterpillar. There you go.
That's a brand. Plymouth have reported significant damage to their pitch after a tractor was driven across it following a break-in at home park.
Yes.
Intruders broke through perimeter fencing outside the stadium on Saturday night. They accessed the garage. They started up a tractor with the aid of tools. I guess they hot-wired a tractor.
That'd be my guess, yeah.
The playing surface had been at an, quote, early and crucial stage of renovation, unquote, ahead of next season. Costly and extensive repairs will now be required following this mindless destruction.
Yeah.
It's not funny. They came and trashed the pitch. Plymouth ain't rich.
No,
the Pilgrims
but they're using of quotation marks about mindless.
That's from your beloved England media, not from Plymouth. The Pilgrims have reported the matter to the police. The Pilgrims, that's the nickname of Plymouth, if you're not aware. They have reported the matter to the police. They're offering a reward for information. An external company that had assisted with groundwork will now need to return to, quote, regerminate the playing surface, and there is no guarantee the damage can be repaired instantly. Plymouth are set to host Swansea and Bristol City in preseason friendlies next month. Good job, numpties, breaking in and messing up Plymouth's pitch.
Hot wiring a tractor so you can mess up a pitch. That's brilliant.
Yeah, pretty bad. So when Plymouth starts their GoFundMe, they probably need to be contributed to because good grief. I mean, it's nothing Plymouth did, Kevin. It's not their fault. They probably are going to need some help paying for this.
Yeah.
So if there's anything that can be done to help them, that will need to be spread out there, and we will do it if we see anything, depending on what their ownership situation is. I don't know how much money they have in the kitty. Yeah, there goes the transfer budget of $10 that they might have had.
Yeah.
So they got to redo the pitch, which is pretty ridiculous that you're having these issues, but you've had these issues across a variety of different things in different places. It's absurd.
Yeah.
Small club that does not need to be having to throw money at this, because then I'm sure people will complain about them not spending money somewhere else, and this is where it gets, and blah, 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 blah. It sucks. So we'll keep you posted on that. We'll keep you posted on anything else that comes up through the rest of the day and dig into it. We will get into some of the promotion relegation playoffs that are still going. There was a great goal line saving overhead bicycle kick by in Italy in the games going on there. They've finished the first leg. They haven't had the second leg. That's next week in the Serie C going up. They've had Serie B go up. They haven't had Serie C go up yet. And it's a battle. Padova has a chance to get back to Serie B for the first time in a long time. We'll see if they can do that.
Ivan Marconi of Palermo was what we were looking at.
Palermo, thank you. Yes. Palermo has the 1-0 lead over Padova, and the overhead kick was Marconi. And we'll see if Padova can get it done to get back up. Alexi Lawless cheering for Padova for sure, and the City Football Group cheering for Palermo. We'll get into some of the other things from other leagues as well. We'll get you caught up on who's doing what. Nations League, because frankly, I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to it. Got to get caught up on that myself. Same with CONCACAF Nations League, UEFA Nations League, all that stuff. We'll get caught up on that tonight. We'll get any other rumors that come across, because that's where things are really starting to ramp up, is what happens next for a number of big players and big clubs. Liverpool has some questions. They're also linked to pretty much every player out there right now, so they can create some answers to those questions. Mo Salah, does he get a new deal, or does that continue to ramp up? Who does Real Madrid go and splash the cash on? We'll just have to see where that goes. Byrne tells us in the Twitch pitch that George Bellows' new coach is a guy who comes from the Swiss second division. It's a big difference than what he's used to. We'll see if it suits him. All kinds of things for us to get into tonight on Soccer Over There. 7:05 tonight. No show tomorrow morning live. We'll have content throughout the day on the network, but no show in the morning live. We are dragging Jarrett Smith back out to the golf course. I don't think he will try to injure a goose, but I don't put it past him. I also don't know if he could hit it if he aimed at it. And we'll try to keep him from falling into the lake, but we make no guarantees. And I do guarantee I won't push him, at least. I promise I won't do that. John, different conversation.
Angry geese, mate. Why are you accusing me of wanting to push a fellow golfer into a body of water?
No, you cut me off. I was saying if John ends up in the water, I'm not making any guarantees that I didn't push him. That's what I was trying to say. That said, I'm not going to push Jared in, but you know.
But if it's me, it's something might have happened.
Last time on the first hole, you were yelling at my ball to go in the water. So that's all I'm going to say.
I was hoping, sir, that it was going to work its way back into the fairway, because it started left and was working its way right. And I was hoping it was going to land in the fairway.
What did you say? What were you telling my ball to do?
Come back.
And where was it coming back towards?
It was coming back towards the fairway from the woods.
No, it was heading towards the water, which is where it ended up. That's what happened. And I was very upset. You upset my golf ball. You made it go into the water with your conversation to it. I told you don't talk to my golf ball again.
And
you did not.
I shut up after that point.
You did not.
I did not encourage any future golf balls behavior after the first hole, after you told me not to have any kind of conversation with your golf ball whatsoever.
Do not talk to my golf ball. So if you do and John ends up in the lake, well, you know what happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all I'm going to say. If John talks to my golf ball, he might end up in a lake tomorrow. That's all I got. We'll see what happens. That'll be tomorrow. You guys won't see that, thankfully, because nobody wants to watch us play golf, because it's not going to be very good. But we will be back on Wednesday. But Soccer Over There tonight. John will have functioning internet by then and not look like he's being seen through the skin of a potato.
Yes, or Vaseline on the lens to take care of any kind of wrinkles or crow's feet or anything like that. It's an old TV trick too.
Yeah, Sean, I'm just going to leave that one alone. And Kevin, there was not pressure. John was not there to win, because that's not how it happened at all. And who did win that day, by the way?
That would be you, sir.
Yeah. Anyway, so.
No, I'm not disputing that your golf game is better than mine right now. That is not a topic that I'm going to challenge you on.
It's not that good, but getting there.
But yours is better than mine, and you are far more consistent on an 18-hole course.
That's what I would have said. Is I'm more consistent. I'm not going to go like it's good, but I was a little more consistent.
No, your game literally is tee, fairway, and fairway approach, and then it's the short stuff.
Tee vicinity of the fairway.
You hit the fairway more than you give yourself credit. You really do.
No. I hit it more than I give myself credit, sure, but I'm not getting as wild to the sides as at times you were.
Well, and I've also, after those instances, I basically put my driver back in the bag, and so. It is 3 woods and 5 woods and that stuff, and hybrids off the tee, and that is the extent of it right now, because if I cannot control my driver, I do not want to lose 22 golf balls in a round of golf.
That's Jared's job.
Yeah, and so that's why I always bring an extra sleeve, an extra box for Jarrett. So dialing my game back to help Jarrett and seeing the consistency of yours gives me something to shoot for.
Dialing your game back to help Jared. I like the explanation there. Jarrett says he watched the video, so he's going to be much better. We'll find out. I'm sure we'll talk about it on Wednesday.
Yep.
Yeah, John is gearing up, Bern. He's starting to set that up to try to be better. He's going to be going out to the range. He's going to get an instructor, all these different things John's going to be working on for sure. Sean, we'll get you out there one of these days. You'll kill all of us. It's no big deal.
Yes, no kidding.
But tonight we will have soccer over there, and I'm sure we'll say things that'll upset everybody because that's what we do. We're pretty good at that, aren't we?
Yeah.
And then tomorrow we will not have a show. We'll just upset the geese on the golf course, and then we'll be back on Wednesday. So y'all have a good rest of the day. Much platiel.
Much platiel.